you so much. That was a lovely introduction. Thank you. I was going to come up here and tell you all about myself, but I guess you already know. What I actually would like to start with is just to give you an idea of how I actually was offered the job at the Welcome Center shelter, because it's a really cool story in my opinion. So back in 2016, when I was still working at Good Life Fitness, one of my employees had left the gym to go work for the shelter, but she was one of the sweetest people I'd ever met, so I kept in contact with her, and I wanted to keep a relationship going just because she was such a lovely person. So one day I was like, we should go out for lunch. We haven't seen each other in a long time. She goes, okay, do you want to come get me at the shelter? And I said, okay, great, I'll come get you. So I'm driving up to where the shelter was prior to where we're located now, which is at 263 Bridge. I don't know if anybody knows that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we used to be on Bridge Street in a house that was not very big. So when I pulled up to the shelter to pick up my friend, I was like, oh my God, this is the shelter? She's like, yeah, we're kind of trying to work on getting a new building. It's not the greatest. And so she told me a little bit about that location and how underwhelming it was, for lack of a better term. There was a really, really high demand for shelter in the city, and that's all they had at the time was this house that was started back in 1993, I want to say, with a group of ladies in Windsor. So she said, this is the shelter. We're working tirelessly to raise funds to get a bigger building. We can accommodate more people and help more people in the community. So I said, cool. So I sing. I have a bunch of friends that sing. I think we should put on a concert. That kind of sounds like a cool thing to do. Let's do it. So I gathered up all of my besties from Windsor Light Music Theater. I said, guys, we're going to put on a concert. We're going to raise money for the Welcome Center shelter, and we're going to hopefully give them a good chunk of change to get them towards their new building. So we got together, and having never planned a fundraiser event in my life, we raised about $800, which was not great at the time, but it was a good start, I guess. So back in 2016, that was our very, very first concert. And with the exception of COVID, I kept that annual tradition up to do it every single year, and with the goal to raise just a little bit more every year than the year before. Every little bit helps, I thought to myself, why not? So we had to take the pandemic off, obviously, for everybody knows why that is. So we had been training and rehearsing and putting on this great concert we started probably November of 2021 or 2019. Then we had it set to go in April of 2020, which we shut down about a month before that. So we had this beautiful concert ready to go, and we had high hopes about it raising all these thousands of dollars, but we had to shut down. We picked it back up just this past August, and we ended up raising $3,500, which is significantly more. which was significantly more than that first one of the mere $800. So that's something that I've had a passion for, was raising money for the shelter for the past 7 years, actually. So when I went to the shelter to hand over to Lady Lafayette, who's our executive director, and giving her this little bag of cash, here you go, $3,500. She's like, do you want to work for us? And I think at that moment, I probably broke into tears. And I was like, oh my God, yes, I would love to work for you. She's like, you've been fundraising for us for years. You want to get paid for it? So here we are. So now I work at the shelter, and I'm super proud and super honored to have gotten that position, because it really puts my passion, what I've always worked towards in my life, was to make a difference in the community. And that's why I'm so happy to be working with the shelter. So thank you so much for having me so I can talk about my passion today. So as I had mentioned, I know that a number of you know that we used to be in a much smaller location on Bridge Street. Just this past July, hold on, let me preface by saying how this came to be. So we had such a high demand for shelter that prior to the pandemic, I don't know if anybody saw it in the paper, but that summer prior, we had so many homeless women and families. We could not take them in, that they were sleeping in sleeping bags on the front lawn of that little house. So we had tents and sleeping bags. We had to put people somewhere. So that's where they were. And that kind of lit a fire somewhere in the city of Windsor. And over the pandemic, they're like, you know what? I think we need a project to get this shelter a bigger building, because we're the only shelter in Windsor and Essex County that can take in families. Nowhere else does that. If you're a single woman with experiencing domestic violence, you go to the hiatus house. If you're a single woman, or I believe it's women only, with an addiction journey, then you would go to the House of Sofferstein. Matthew House for the newcomers to Canada, and the Downtown Mission and the Salvation Army are for men, typically single men who don't fit into any of the categories for the women's shelters. So that's what we kind of have in Windsor. The Welcome Center Shelter for Women started back in early 90s, now is known as the Welcome Center Shelter for Women and Families, because now we can take in families. During the pandemic, the city of Windsor saved up some money to repurpose old hotels specifically for this reason. So that's how we ended up in the building we are in now, which is at 500 Tuscarora, and it's the old Comfort Inn. So that's the building that we're in now. Yeah, has anybody ever driven by or seen the new location? Yes, a number of you. Awesome. Yeah, it's really great because prior to being in this building, we actually had our family stay at the I-Check Inn on Howard, and we had some staff members working with them there. And then we could only host the single women over on Bridge Street. So it kind of made it difficult for operations purposes to be in two different buildings, having our staff all over the city. But now we're all under one roof, and we can house the families, the women, and now pets as well, which is another thing that's dear to my heart because I'm an animal lover. So if somebody's at a risk for homelessness or is experiencing homelessness, you basically really in a bad place in your life, and the last thing you want to do is have to give up your fur baby. So I'm so glad that we have some rooms designated specifically for people with their pets. So that's one of the most exciting things. Yeah.
How much of that building do you occupy? The whole thing?
The whole thing is ours. There's 3 floors. So 3 floors, there's, I want to say 32 rooms, and we can at maximum capacity have 120 people on site.
Wow. Did the city buy that and gift it to you or ask you to operate it?
Yes, so that's exactly it. There was an initiative called Chippy. I would love to tell you what it stands for, but I truly cannot remember it. So that's basically specifically for homeless organizations. So the city of Windsor funds us and the Salvation Army because we're the sole family and women's shelter, and the Salvation Army is a men's shelter. So they do fund just the 2 of us in that sense, where they help us with our buildings, and the city of Windsor repurposed that hotel and basically lets us occupy it.
7 million, if my numbers correctly.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it was somewhere around there. I don't know the exact figure, but that's, yeah. Yeah, it was actually one of the best things that they've ever done for us because now we can take in way more people than we could ever before. Yeah, so that brings me to actually our current building, which is a 3-floor building. The 3rd floor is where we host our single women because we do try to keep everything separate for the safety and the comfort of all of our clients. So on the 3rd floor is where we keep our single women. On the 2nd floor, we have a children's program, which is also very new to the location that we're in now. We've never been able to have a children's program before on site. Bless you. Prior to this, it was in like a little portable, like at high schools, they have portable classrooms. It was kind of like that, just at a different location when it was a kids program. So back in the early 90s, a woman named Pat Noonan, I don't know if anybody's heard that name. Oh, yeah. Yes. Oh, I love that you guys have heard of her. So Pat Noonan, wonderful lady. She's the one that started this whole thing. And she started what's called Patsy's Place, which is what our children's program is called. And it was intended specifically to be an educational and just a happy place for kids to be, because having children at the shelter environment is very, very hard, as you can imagine. And the unfortunate part, and I don't always like to say this because it's very, very sad reality, but in February of 2023, our statistics said that in our shelter, out of 120 people, 55% of which were under the age of 16, which is really, really heartbreaking because since the pandemic, more families have experienced homelessness than ever before. we're in a serious housing crisis. I'm sure everybody's aware of that. This housing crisis has really put a stress on the shelter system, because not only do we lack the space to take in everybody we want to take in, but we also lack the resources to help them get housed. Trying to find a house that's within somebody's budget is a near impossible task, which is why our social workers / housing support workers at the shelter are unsung heroes, because they work every single day tirelessly with all the families and the women to get them housed. And that's our main objective. Our number one philosophy is when you walk through our doors, we want to get you safely housed, long-term housed, because we don't want anybody to come back to us a few months later in the same position they were in when they walked in. So anybody who comes into our shelter gets assigned a social / housing worker, and they work with them the entire time they're there to get them safely housed. That is a basic human need that absolutely everybody is entitled to and deserves. And that's how we operate. We are laser focused on getting housing. Any questions so far? I don't want to throw too much information at you. Yes, please.
How much to capacity are you now helping clients, like of your 30 some odd rooms?
Yeah, so currently we have 96 on site, 96 people. Most nights we are at capacity.
And how long is the average client with you?
Excellent question. Numbers have changed drastically since the pandemic. It used to be for a single woman somewhere between 3 to 6 weeks. Now it's more like 8 to 12 weeks. For a family, it used to be 8 to 12 weeks. Now it's more like up to 3 months. Just because that's how difficult it is to find housing. So yeah, that's a very good question.
Ooh, lots of questions.
Yes.
So I teach high school. So what do the kids who are older, what do they do? When you say Patsy's room, what do they do for schooling? And do they have contact with their schools, or how are they keep maintaining their education?
Yes, so as long as it's possible, and coming from a trauma perspective, as long as the kids are able to go to school, then we 100% support that, and we have transportation for them. So we make sure the kids go to school. We also have a lunch program. So the parents that enter the shelter can sign up to make sure their kids have a lunch every single day before they leave. Okay. So we have an awesome kitchen on site, and we feed everybody 3 meals a day, every day. So yeah, if you are a parent, you can sign up, make sure the kids are going to school with a full lunch. And then so the kids that cannot go to school, they are in our children's place doing educational activities and keeping them not only entertained and sane, but also keeping them, keeping them engaged and challenging them, just making sure they're doing something that's going to better them. Sure, sorry, there was a couple more questions.
What do you attribute the growth in clientele over the last few years to? Is it like a refugee system or issue, or is it like why all of a sudden did these families and women?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Happen, in the way that they are.
From what we've seen, I want to say it's a combination of both. Definitely a big surge in refugees due to the war happening overseas. So that is a part of it, but also the pandemic really hurt us. People lost their jobs, people became really ill, people lost family members. So all of that, plus the big housing crisis, has made it almost impossible for people to either keep their homes or be able to afford rents. But yeah, there's definitely a bit of both, I would say. Yeah.
If individuals have some money coming in, disability, income, like work income, do they give any of that over?
So another great one. You guys are so good at asking questions. I love it.
This is our first rodeo.
Yay! I love it, because I don't want to just stand up here and talk the whole time. So thank you. Yeah, that's a really great question. Actually, we have what's called a pre-intake process. So when somebody calls us saying that they're in need of shelter, we do a pre-intake questionnaire. That includes, what's your situation? Where are you at? How come you're in this situation? What can we do to help? But then when they come in, if we deem them eligible, one of the criteria for eligibility for shelter, because it is an emergency homeless shelter, is that you don't make a certain amount. So we have a threshold that if you exceed that, then you're not actually eligible for shelter stay. Now, people that receive Ontario Works or ODSP, a part of that is there's a housing portion. So we don't get that, but that's withheld from that. So let's say you receive, I'm just gonna use a square number of $2,000. Sometimes $1,000 of that goes towards housing, whereas the other thousands for basic needs. They'll probably take 600 out of that. So Ontario Works or ODSP will hold that from you because you're not paying for rent or mortgage. You're in shelter, so they'll just hold that back. Now, in the event that because the goal while you're in shelter is that you do get housed, as soon as there's a contract signed for housing, the City of Windsor also has support, a program that clients can apply for that cover their first and last month's rent. So if somebody finds an apartment or a house and like, listen, I just don't have $6,000 to pay for the first and last, City of Windsor will subsidize that, which is really, really cool. So yeah, if you make over a certain amount, you're not eligible to be in shelter because it is truly like, it should be a last resort. We always go through, do you have a family member you can stay with? If you've got like large amount of money in the bank, please stay in a hotel because you're taking a bed away from somebody who's got nothing. So we're very, very strict with that policy, is that this is an absolute last resort emergency shelter. You have no other options. That's why you're here with us. So very good question. Yes.
What are your needs right now that are not being met?
Yeah, so currently, actually, we always update our website with a quarterly wish list. So currently we're, again, very, very sad thing to say, we're currently in need of a lot of baby items. We have some newborns that have come into shelter recently. So we need like diapers, baby wipes, pajamas, that kind of things. So it does change as our demographic changes. Sometimes you'll see we have, like right now, I don't know, there's no rhyme or reason for it, but we have like 5 newborns in the building and we can't keep up with diapers. Sometimes you'll have a lot of men that are suddenly part of a family that come in. Okay, well now we gotta start getting shaving things, and you know what I mean? So that kind of stuff, it changes regularly. But yeah, currently, if you have diapers or baby wipes, drop them off because we can definitely use them. So that's actually another thing I want to mention is when I say we take in women and families, what that means is that any single woman, anybody self-identified as a woman, or even a man with a child. So a family dynamic is basically where children are involved. So we don't take in couples. So if just a man and a woman come in, or anybody that's in a couple dynamic, if there's a gentleman involved, then we can't take them in as a single man. That's when we would send them over to Salvation Army. But if we could have a single dad with 3 kids or a kid that comes in and says, I need shelter, because nowhere else can take in a family unit. Yeah, and the last thing we want is for somebody to be in a position where they're homeless and have CAS come and take their child away. That would just be adding insult to injury, right? So that's why I'm really glad that we can take in families. That's a biggie for us. Any other questions so far?
Just wondering.
Yeah.
What happens if you have an actually whole family that is just down under Washington? What do? You have to split them up before it goes to Salvation Army and you keep mother and children, or is there somewhere they can go?
That actually they can stay with us on site. That's so yeah, but before we would have had to split them up. When we were at the old location on Bridge, we would have literally had to split them up, send the man to the downtown Mission or Salvation Army and keep the women and kids with us. But now we're so lucky to have this new building because we can keep them on site. And we just actually housed a family of 6 that were staying in a room. Yeah. Now it being an older hotel is really, really cool because we do have these big suites that if we need to, we can put a family of 8, family of 7 in there. And every room has its own bathroom, which is really cool just because it's a hotel. So it's kind of nice like that. You do get some sort of privacy. You never have to share a communal bathroom.
Speaking of families having their own bathroom and their own room, are they responsible for cleaning their room and their bathroom? Or is there maid service that comes in and takes care of that?
So everybody's responsible to keeping their own space
That's
clean.
nice to know.
Yes, so absolutely, they're all responsible for keeping their own room clean. However, especially when children are involved, we do inspections to make sure it's kept up and making sure that the kids are living in a sanitary and appropriate environment. And if the need arises, we do offer someone to come in, but we of course need to get their permission.
What about laundry?
Unless it's harming a child. Yes, we have a laundry facility on site as well that our clients have access to. They just sign up for it. So just like, we have like 2-hour time blocks and they just have to call the front desk and sign up for a time slot and they have the laundry room for 2 hours to do their laundry. Yes.
Being that you spoke the hotel setup, and I was gonna ask you before you said about the suite that you have,
Mhm.
are all the rooms like different sizes or are most of them the same size? Has it been retrofitted in a way that some are family unit of 6 people, 4, whatever?
Yeah, great
How
question.
does that kind of work? Oh,
They're
and
all
how many
different
rooms you
sizes.
have in total, by the way?
Yeah, we have 32 rooms in total. And yes, they are all sized differently. So that's why we kind of have designated floors. The third floor tends to have the bigger rooms. So sometimes we will put a larger family on the third floor. We try to keep the families on the second floor because that's where the children's place is. But sometimes if we have a larger family like the one we just had, we put them on the third floor because mainly those big rooms, we can put 4 ladies to a room. So it's kind of like bunk bed / dorm style, I
So the
guess.
single women that come in are like 3 or 4 in one.
3 or 4 to a room, yeah. And of course, we always do like a screening to make sure they're a good fit for each other because we don't want
Right.
anybody fighting or,
Right.
yeah,
Throwing somebody up.
exactly. We haven't had that happen, thankfully, so touch wood. Yes.
Hopefully,
I was worried about the third floor. Yeah, I think last year and this year, I think that we, our club, have brought over apples and bananas to your. Are there other items, like food items that you need?
So actually, thank you for saying that, because one of the things I did want to mention is that all Rotary clubs, like, we love you guys. Honestly, every single Rotary club in this city has given us something. Like, you guys really, really do great things for us, and we appreciate it so much. Yes, you've brought us so much food, and any non-perishable food item, even fruits and veggies that we can use right away, are always in need for kids' lunches, even for breakfast items, because that portion of it is out of pocket for the shelter. So the city of Windsor covers 80% of our expenses, but the food, the children's program and our drop-in program is the other 20% portion that we fundraise for. So that is one thing specifically that we always welcome is food items for the kitchen. Yes.
In terms of how people are eating at the facility, is it a cafeteria style? Is it family style? Do they cook in their rooms? Or are they utilizing food banks or all of the above?
Actually, so when we were on Bridge Street, it was food banks. That's all we could do. But now we're in this new building, we have an in-house kitchen, an industrial sized kitchen, as you can imagine what a hotel would have needed. We have that kitchen and they cook 3 meals a day, buffet style for all the families.
Who's they?
Oh, sorry, we have staff, our kitchen staff. We staff specifically, I think there's about a group of 10 kitchen staff, led by a wonderful lady named Jessica Bondi. She honestly budgets and cooks like the best meals ever for our clients. And we have a little takeout window. And we do have a lobby that they can just grab their food and sit in the lobby and eat it, or families and clients can grab the food from the kitchen and go up to their rooms. That's kind of up to them what they choose to do. But it's kind of like you go up to the window, we put up the menu every morning. Like for breakfast this morning, you have the choice of A, B, and C. For dinner, you have the choice of A, B, and C for lunch. And so people can kind of choose what they want. And specifically now because we're in the month of Ramadan right now, so a lot of our Muslim clients are fasting. So our kitchen staff accommodates that as well. So we know that they don't eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner at the same time that it's usually served. So they'll offer at dinner time to get 3 portions to take up and to eat overnight when everyone else is actually sleeping. So yeah, we try to be as accommodating as possible. Yes.
So with children in the place, you probably have birthdays that happen while the families are there. Do you have birthday parties? You do?
We do, not so much as like in the lobby, a huge party, but upon intake, we take down everybody's date of birth and we bring it to the kitchen. And this is an initiative that Jessica started. She will bake a cake for everybody's birthday. So the kitchen staff will bake a cake, they'll bring it up to the room, sing happy birthday, hand over the cake, and from donations, we have like little toys and little coloring books and things like that that we just bring with us just to bring it up their day. Yeah.
Something to children, and you alluded to it, children's program, you say you have a children's program, what does it entail?
So it entails, I want to say it's a glorified babysitting service, but not really, because the parents are not allowed to just leave their children with us and leave. So the kids can be in the kids program as long as their parents are in the building, and anybody under the age of 8 has to be with the parent present. But we have activities in the room. They can play video games if they want. The kids can watch a movie. We have volunteers that come in and do activities with them, painting. For Easter, we did egg coloring, do like little bunny crafts. So we have always organized activities based on what's happening in that time of year. You know, for Christmas, they made cards for their parents and things like that. So that kids program is specifically to keep the kids engaged and not just sitting in their hotel room all day.
So it's not an actual educational program thing that's kind of have a structure, okay?
It's more like a daycare, I would say.
Because I
or
thought
like
if
a
we
latch
had one, you know, what subsidized you might need for a program that's an ongoing thing
Mhm.
for kids, you know, whatever. I thought maybe there was something like that. Just thinking forward.
Yeah, right now, that's not the structure of it. However, there's been talk in evolving the kids program, but that would of course involve hiring teachers and different kind of
Costly.
staff that we have. That's a different
Yeah,
cost.
costly, that's why I was
Yeah.
wondering about it. because
Yeah.
Sometimes we support programs that are up there on, and those kinds of things. If there's a structured program, that there's a cost involved, and say, hey,
Yes.
you know, could you sponsor this for $1,000, $500, $1,500, whatever,
Yeah.
you know, that kind of thing? But it doesn't
What's,
look like you have that yet.
What's in the works right now, actually, what we've been approved for, have funded, raised funds for, is an outdoor children's area as well, just to get them outside, because our building has almost like a drive, like by the door, you know, like kind of like a valet
Well, like
service,
This one, yeah.
kind of like this one.
Yep.
So we're gonna be this summer blocking that off and putting in like a playground. So our fundraising committee over the past couple of years has kind of been putting aside money for the children's program specifically, so we can do an outdoor program. Yeah.
Total number of staff and or volunteer or a combination.
Okay, so total number of 8 staff. I would say about 25 people. Volunteers is a revolving number that changes depending on the time of year and who we have available. We typically like to have 3 to 5 volunteers every single day on set. So yeah, you're talking about 30 to 35 people, volunteer and paid, that are there to serve the clients every single day. And we are 24/7 staffed. Yeah. Any other questions?
What does a volunteer do?
So a volunteer, I'll take you through the program right from the beginning, is we interview the volunteer. They have to fill out an application, get a vulnerable sector police clearance, as well as be, they kind of, like if it's somebody with community service hours, we do need like a reference letter from where they're coming from, or if it's somebody that just wants to volunteer their time, we do orientation. I kind of talk to them the way I'm talking to you guys and fill them in on everything that is shelter, prepare them for the things that they could face there, but they are essentially our second-hand man, so to speak, where there'll be some that are at shelter support that are in the main office with our shelter support staff, that maybe a client locks themselves out of a room, they let them in. Maybe a client's like, my kid won't stop crying and I need to take a shower. Can you please help me out? Then they'll go and help them. Or I dropped something, I can't pick it up. Anything of that sort, getting to their appointment. So our volunteers do a lot, basically whatever we need them to do.
I think Mary Lou has a question for you.
Yes. Oh, please don't be shy. We're all friends. Let me
That's
know.
usually that's the question.
It's not, I'm not shy. I was gonna ask you afterwards. We're gonna do another apple run. And before you had, let me see here, 3 boxes. Are you interested in 3 more?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank
3
you.
floors.
Our kitchen staff would love that, just so they can throw them in the kids' lunch or give them, yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. That's
Ed doesn't have a question.
I got mine in there earlier, thank you.
Oh.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
You've heard that we do a lot of different things with this club,
Mhm.
including an environmental sustainability area where we're actually working on Earth Day.
Yeah.
We've got a number of events happening in Earth Day, and some of them include young people. And we were wondering, can we send you information about what we're doing so that maybe some of the families and children can participate?
Absolutely.
Do you know, could you give us a name of who we should talk to?
Me.
Okay.
You can send all that information my
I'll
way.
send
Yes.
Susie's email to you. and then
Very
you
good.
can
Yeah,
handle
Phyllis
it.
and Paul both have my contact
Alias is
information.
Susie Q.
Yes, and
Susie Q?
you can call me Hey You, and I'd be fine with that. Yes, so that's it. Yeah, that's great, actually. We love that. We try to get our families and clients involved as much as we can. So that's a great opportunity. So please do send me the information.
Well, Susie, on behalf of the club, I'd like to thank you for coming out
Thank
today.
you so much.
It's great to see that the Welcome Center has changed locations and you're able to
Yes.
provide so much more support to families. That's wonderful. So this is our little token.
Oh, cute. Thank you so much.
Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to meet you all.
I have one more question. I didn't want to do it during this.
Sure, yeah.
You were at one time a refugee yourself.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about your journey?
Absolutely. So when we moved to Ottawa when I was 7 years old, we moved in with my aunt in Ottawa.
How did you get to Ottawa?
Oh,
Like, how did
okay.
you leave and get here?
You know what? I'll actually take you back a little bit further. So my dad passed away when I was 2 years old. Prior to my father's death, he had been putting in the works an opportunity to move the whole family out of Syria. My dad served in the army in Syria, and he was really heavy into politics. And as soon as my mom was pregnant with me and they found out that it was a girl, he said, I don't want to raise my daughter in the Middle East. We need to get out of here. So that's how it all started, with my father telling my mom and my brothers, listen, you now have a little sister, we now have a little girl in the family, we need to get out of here. This is no place to raise a woman. I want her to go to university, I want her to drive a car, I want her to have all the opportunities in the world. So when my father passed away when I was 2 years old, he was not quite complete with the process. And my mom and my brothers wanted to continue with his wishes and said, you know what, he didn't want you to grow up in Syria, let's get you out of here. It took that long to get my aunt to do a sponsorship program, to get us to be able to even complete all the paperwork to leave Syria. It took almost 5 years for all that, because the Middle East does not make it easy to leave. And for us to be able to leave with basically, because at the time there was no war. At the time Syria was peaceful and everything was great on paper. So it was like, unless you lived there and went to the military and knew everything about politics, ins and outs, it's almost like he predicted things were gonna go to crap. So he just said, I want to get my family out of here, specifically now that we have a girl. So my mom and my brothers worked very, very hard after my dad passed away to get us out of there. And by the time it all happened, I was 7, but all my brothers were 18 plus, because the youngest set of my brothers is 11 years older than me. So by the time everything came to be, they were all 18 plus, so they couldn't come with us. So they worked, my 2 brothers went to Libya to work to make more money than they did in Syria. My other brother went to Saudi Arabia and worked as a goldsmith for 3 years to save up enough money to get us out of there. So all 3 of my brothers, and I'm very, very fortunate to be where I am today because of them, they worked very, very tirelessly to get me and my mom out of there. So that's when they sent us to Ottawa to stay with my aunt temporarily. Ottawa was really, really high cost of living, and my aunt had a family of 5 and just couldn't do it all. So we ended up moving to Windsor, where my mom's uncle lived, and have been here ever since. Didn't speak a lick of English when we moved here.
Wow.
Yeah, have you seen them making peace by chocolate?
I have, and I cannot believe how much